hold on. It says setting up the meeting.
Do we need to mute everybody or not?
Oh, we
You guys
got
speak.
Ifanyi here. We got Ifanyi.
Oh, he made it, huh? Okay.
Do we need it? Do people need to mute who are not going to be on? Who are not talking?
It would be good, yeah, when you're not talking to mute. Okay, so now it's saying, hold on, I'm just trying to make sure it's all working.
You're not gonna need that.
I'm gonna mute.
Okay, hold on, it's still going, adding itself in here. Come on. All right.
Nadim, he made it. Ifanyi, are you here? He looked like he's trying to be here.
Yeah, still trying to connect. Okay, there it goes.
Hey,
Okay.
Ifanyi.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, you made it. I'm just
All
trying
right.
to see where
I'm trying
Everybody
to get
here.
with the video.
everybody's here. Okay, so we're on here then. Yes, we're live, people.
Are we live?
We are.
Okay. Turn this off. So I want to welcome everybody who is joining us tonight or this afternoon, evening, wherever you all are in the world.
Yeah, still trying to connect. Okay, there it goes.
Hey, Ifanyi. If you're not talking, if you could mute. Everybody here.
Everybody's here. Okay, so we're on here then. Yes, we're
Okay,
live.
so
people.
why is this
We
happening?
live? We are.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. So I want to welcome everybody who is joining us tonight or this afternoon, evening, wherever you all are in the world.
Yeah, still trying to connect. Okay, there it goes.
If you're not talking,
Can you guys hear that happening?
yes.
Okay, let me see what's happening. I don't know why this is happening. Okay, let me get out of this.
Is your phone on? Is there something causing?
There, it's gone
Okay.
now.
It's gone.
Okay, good.
Are we ready? Good.
Yeah.
All right. So the reason for this evening's live Facebook has to do with the recent really tragic deaths of two African-American people, man and woman, Brianna and Ahmaud. So we wanted to give an opportunity for Black males to really talk about it. This is prior to finding out about Brianna. We invited Black males from around the country to kind of just really lean into this and talk about how it has impacted them, because what we've discovered is that these events, they always trigger us. They trigger us, they cause kind of a re-traumatization to African-American people in general, but Black males in particular. And I really wanted to give an opportunity to hear, because it's also voiceless. You know, whenever something happens in the world, you have Doctors Without Borders, you have folks running in to make certain that everybody's mental, physical well-being is intact. No one does that for us. So this is an effort to, one, give voice to folks, and then to kind of talk about how we can take care of ourselves when these things happen. And again, this is not passive. You know, this is an active thing that we have to do in our lives. So I'd like to first start with everyone introducing themselves. Of course, I am Dr. Joy D. Grew.
Latif, hey.
My husband.
What's up, y'all? I'm Rocky.
I go by he, him, out, and they.
I'm a mute him. I'm a mute.
I'm Nadim.
Who are you?
Nadim Cross.
And what do you do?
I am a father and I am a community advocate.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just like one thing. I didn't give my little presentation. Of course, you know, it's Ramadan, so I'm fasting right now, and that's really a wonderful thing. But also, just to jump right into the subject matter, I just want to say, to me, Ahmed Aubrey, the jogger in Georgia, was gunned down, of course, last February, but his birthday was this past Friday.
Mm.
And his birthday, he turned 26.
Mm.
And today is my youngest son's birthday, who turned 26.
Mm.
So to me, just the thought of just, you know, losing somebody right now, your child at that point, or your son, would be devastating. So it's almost a personal thing to me in being from Georgia, of course. So yeah, I got a little bit of feelings about this.
Sure.
Next, I pick Ifeanyi.
Yeah, Ifeanyi here. I'm in Portland, Oregon. I'm a filmmaker, producer, writer. Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things that I thought about just yesterday, I think it was, that there's a lot of tragedy that's occurring and that's continued to occur and affect Black people, Black men specifically when dealing with physical violence. But I noticed something in the way that a slight undercurrent that's happening as a result of Black people in general, not only functioning in an adjudicative fashion relative to being lawyers, but there are Black judges that are now functioning at the local level, the national level, who are directly contradicting what normally would be an open and shut case. And this is not just with respect to the physical violence that Black men have endured and the lack of accountability that white males particularly have enjoyed in the killing and the attacking of Black men, but in other cases as well. You're seeing places where the judge in the Michael Flynn case is a Black man. The judge in the case where the white woman flouted the salon, who sentenced her initially to jail for however many days, was a Black man. The judge in the case of Breonna, who freed the man who the police attacked, was a Black man. And you're seeing in their judges on the bench not allowing bringing a new perspective about, and I guess what I could call an empathy to a situation where it didn't exist before, that advocates for Black people in general. And I see what's happening in the news media when you hear the quotes from establishment, sort of white, good old boys who are used to people getting away with stuff like this, attacking not directly the judges, but attacking the decisions that they're making in a way that clearly points to like them not being able to get away and enjoy the kind of implied freedoms that white men have enjoyed since the founding of the country. So I see that as being a shift that's occurring that I find interesting to see amid all the tragedy, that I think that it's not going to be business as usual, or it will be much more difficult for people to sort of get away with these sorts of violences.
Thank you. Next.
Let's do Malik.
Hi, I'm Malik, and this is my son Akil. We are in Maui, Hawaii. I am a college teacher and advisor and a writer and a father and a husband. The thing that this might be a little bit disconnected from, or like indirectly connected to what we're talking about. I tend to try to take a look at the entire picture when it comes to Black people in general and what we have had to absorb in terms of abuse or endure, and then what our potential solutions should or could potentially be. In this particular, I don't know, it just comes back to me when Martin Luther King quoting, or perhaps alluding to something that James Baldwin had said when he said, "I fear that I have integrated my people into a burning house." And it speaks to the woefully deficient standard for which African Americans have resigned themselves to. Obviously, Martin Luther King, his goal was not simply to be able to, like, again, eat at a lunch counter with white people. It was to change the hearts of Southern white Christians. And that was his crusade. And of course, it was not accepted. It wasn't acceptable to white Americans to change their hearts, but it would be more acceptable to legislate certain equalities. And so the character of the problem stops being legislative at that point. I mean, or at least in my eyes, it's not a legislative problem. We seek justice through the courts because it's the best possibility for achieving justice in a country that won't accept its fellow human beings as brothers and sisters. And that is problematic in all circumstances. One of the other things that I see and that I have also observed just sort of on a macro perspective is that, and this is just sort of an example that I think everybody pretty much knows here that in the immediate end of the Civil War, Reconstruction period, to about 1950, the number one form of entertainment for white people was minstrel shows. The abuse of the archetype or the imagery of African American people. And what I do is I question the psychosocial fitness of a people who require abuse of others in order to have self-esteem, or at least to do that. It really speaks to the nature of this fragile relationship, and thus the bloodlust that accompanies that's necessary for that. And to me, in certain ways, Ta-Nehisi Coates just wrote this book, The Water Dancer, and I think the very opening passage is an extended metaphor about the necessity of white people to both simultaneously have Black people around as a source of mental stability, yet abhor their presence. And in that regard, I look at African American people and I have to say that, the diaspora of African Americans must continue, and that there's a global need for African Americans to be out in the world, not only to dispel the nonsense about Africans that has been exported colonially throughout the planet, or the color line, or whatever races. And of course, there are different. I'm not saying that the themes of race and color won't exist other places, perhaps to a lesser degree in terms of the infliction of just mortal injury to African Americans. But I tend to look at these things as those two particular things as very important in the cosmology of African Americans to understand. Obviously, I think we have an obligation. We have special powers and been gifted special opportunities in order to affect the fitness of the heart of this American thing, this militarized republic that we call the United States, and to make it something that is redemptive in the eyes of all human beings. But we also have an obligation to understand that the world is a larger place and that we can always inject what we need to inject. I've always felt that African Americans have a special role in that sense. And if speculating if African Americans were simply to resign or push back from the table, what would that look like? Athletes, entertainers, and say, we're done with this. We can do something better. We can do something for us. We can do something that values us. What impact psychosocially would that have on the country, if not the world? Our imagery is peddled as entertainment globally in that sense. And so when you would take that level of responsibility collectively, what that would have. So when I look at the injuries that African Americans, males, females, everybody continue to absorb. The names Philando Castile and Sandra Bland they're etched in my soul in that sense. I cannot, because you know who they were. You look at them, you understand who they were. These were our friends and our brothers, and you can look at them and you can see in their eyes, especially when they're sitting here. They're bleeding out usually literally on the television screen, and you see the gentleness, the sweetness, the goodness in them, and that nobody else wants to validate. And we have to validate each other for that reason. And so again, the picture that I paint for myself, or at least in my understanding of who I am and what I have to do, is obviously we have to hold all countries and governments, we have to hold them accountable. And I'm sorry, I'm talking too long, because we are unique in that we hold, African Americans have historically held people who have power accountable, being in a position of relative powerlessness. And we've been able to hold people accountable. And the entire world has benefited from that, from the Americans with Disabilities Act to the Lilly Ledbetter. All these things that came out, civil rights legislation, are on the back of African Americans who have always been able to do that. But we also have to take a look at ourselves and what we need to do for ourselves in a way that has perhaps never been done before. And it will take sacrifice on one other's part to do that. It's a new Underground Railroad in that sense. Okay. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thanks, Malik. I want to hear from Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Malcolm.
I want to hear the conversations from some of the younger folks, Akil, Badi, Olinga, I want to hear about your experience with this, how it hit you, how you have navigated it. What was your experience? And any one of you can speak.
Well, I'll introduce myself first. My name's Olinga. I'm from Los Angeles, California. And I think my initial experience was probably that of many folks, where it's like you read the headline, you're in shock, but then there's the temptation to kind of let it wash over and continue on with your day. And I thought with this, it was really important to kind of to hold it, you know, to digest it and kind of like let what you're actually reading and what you're watching process and kind of, you know, filter that. What came out of that was anger, but also the blatant need for structural change, change within our communities and how we behave towards each other, and change within, you know, our judicial system. The fact that it took this video going viral and that outraged millions of people across the country for these people to, you know, to finally be arrested, is immensely frustrating, I think. So those are my initial kind of thoughts about it.
Hey, Olinga, this is Lateef. How old are you?
19.
19. Okay. So let me ask you this: Did this incident stand out more than other incidents of systemic violence against Black people? I mean,
I think for me, when you have the video, which is, you know, extremely graphic, you see this man running.
Yeah.
You hear the person who's filming the video, you know, cocking their gun. Hoping to get out of the car after him.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, when you have all those elements, I think in a format where you're watching it almost live, there's just no denying how like ugly it is, how ugly what you're seeing is, you know. And that
snuff film.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And it really hits you in that respect.
I'm Liz. I'm Olinga's mom. I'm lucky to be a mom. I also live in Los Angeles, and I'm a journalist. Currently, I'm the managing editor of BahaiTeachings.org. But this was the very first time that I have not worked in a newsroom where I had to write about one of these incidents. Because usually when you are the only Black person in a newsroom, it gets assigned to you to write about these things, which is, as a lot of Black journalists talk frequently about, traumatizing in and of itself. Because you have to process it in a straight news sort of way without being allowed to feel the emotions or the feelings at all. And I think for me, another journalist sent me the video and told me to watch it. And then I wish that I didn't. And I told everyone Black I knew, don't watch it. Because it is exactly that. It reminded me of those Faces of Death films from the early 90s that, you know, you would see it and you'd be like, this gotta be fake. This isn't real, you know? And then you're watching this. And I think for me in particular, you know, my grandmother, before she passed, she started talking about a brother that she had that no one in our family had ever heard of or heard her talk about. And it turned out he was the oldest and he had been lynched before they left Georgia. And it reminded me of all the times Olinga has gone out to be like, oh, I'm going for a run around the neighborhood. And what do I always say to you? don't do that, you know? But as a Black parent, you're not supposed to be allowed to express concern or worry or fear about your child. And other parents don't understand what that's like and how psychologically debilitating it is. From the moment you find out you're pregnant, there's a joy, but also a trepidation that exists with this. The other thing I've been thinking about too with this is, you know, I'm a former educator as well. And when you talk to students about bullying, there's the role of the bully and there's the role of the bystander. And what I have observed among people I know who are not Black is a lot of bystanding, a whole lot of bystanding, and a whole lot of, okay, well, that was a couple days ago. Are you still upset about that? And not understanding that this isn't something that we just get over and move on to the next one. It has ripple effects. These are the stories that we have carried through our families that we have heard about. And if you want us to get over it, then you need to change your behavior. And as someone wrote the other day, start raising your children so that they don't kill mine.
Thank you. Badi or Akil?
I feel like my name's Badi. I'm here with my dad. We're in Portland, Oregon, and I feel like my initial reaction was somewhat similar to Olinga's, because I saw the video when the video first came out. I think it was not too long ago when it came out, and my initial reaction was it was like shocked that it was just shocked that this was so blatant. And then when it's so blatant, it doesn't seem like it's that it didn't seem like it was that different from everything else, which what it made me feel. Well, later, like when I was reflecting about how I felt, I was feeling like that was not all. The situations are similar and different in different ways, and I feel like um, I felt a lot of anger. And when I read more about what had happened and how like this wasn't a recent video, but this was a video from months ago, and how it took all that. It took these months and months for it to just come out, and for all that to happen just to have these dudes arrested was pretty. I was pretty angry about that, and so I mean, yeah, that's how I felt.
So Nadim, you introduced yourself. Let's hear from you about what you've been experiencing with the folks that you've dealt with, and the folks you've been working with, and how they've been handling this, because you're working with kids that have been adjudicated, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think, it's weird. Like I was listening to what Badi was just saying at the end in terms of, the justice system and, justice. And I think working with kids who are involved in the justice system, you see how quickly the justice system gets wrapped around these families. A lot of times it's poor families, generational, institutionalization. And so I think, seeing that on one hand, it's so easy for us to get caught up in the system. And then on the other hand, you have folks who are out here murdering people on video and there's still no justice. When I was talking yesterday, with my mom about it, I was kind of in a weird, angry, but then also kind of trying to look for responsibility or something, looking for where can I have some control over this. And I think as a person who works with young people, and I consume a lot of the same information, music, and I think that what I've been coming in my own realization is that this stuff that I feel like it's just normalized, it's culture. I think all this stuff desensitizes the mass culture of America around just Black men in general. Like, how many images do we see of just the fights, right, where these kids are jumping on folks? How many songs can I think about where, even though I love the culture and there's a part of me that really is connected, it still pushes this same agenda, which just says that we're worthless and we're not, and even just and it's just weird getting older, because just, the language we use and all this stuff, I feel like if it was just for us and nobody else could have this culture or tap into it, I think
Right.
I think the fact that it's shared, I think that when you're not Black and when you don't have that love, when you see a Black child or another Black person, I think for those folks who are consuming it, it just desensitizes. It makes you think that we are nothing. And I think these images that we see, like, you've seen so many of them. I've never seen so many people murdered, my whole life up until now, YouTube and all this stuff. How many murders have you seen in the last how many Black men have you seen murdered? And just that alone, that's not normal. And then I think that does something to us as a whole in terms of being desensitized. And I think being angry, I think we all should be angry. And I think as a father, I think my only thing I could think to do is, in some ways it's messed up, but grow my kids up really fast, having real adult conversations with my kids about what they can and can't do. it feels like we're stepping backwards. But I think, you know, it was what I was raised with, and I think they need to know this stuff even more. Because here in Portland, you ain't gonna see it coming.
Can we have everyone? I don't think everyone got to introduce themselves though. So I know we want to make sure everyone gets to introduce themselves. So I don't know if Raki and Dad, Henry, you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Henry, I'm gonna let you go first.
Okay. Well, my name is Henry Cross. I'm the father of Badi, Bahia, Nadim. A lot of these folks are my relatives, one way or another. And Olinga over there, you know, he reminds me of me at 19, believe it or not. And so much so. Anyway, I tell him that all the time. But, you know, it's interesting because we live in Portland, but I wasn't born and raised in Portland. I grew up in many different places. I was born in the Jim Crow South in Georgia, but I never lived there. So my parents, who had been there all their lives, moved out 2 months after I was born and took me to New York City, which is where I kind of came into some consciousness about who I was. We lived in Harlem in New York City. We didn't just live in Harlem. We lived in Harlem in a household with my aunt, who was one of these tenement apartments, 143rd in Amsterdam. And you go Google Earth, you'll see exactly. It looks the same. But, you know, we lived in a tenement apartment. We had probably 7, 8 people in the house. You know, my grandmother, father, brother, my aunt, her husband, who is Chinese, and then always at least 2 of his cousins who lived there. So we had my Uncle Wing and Wang Fat and Choi Gun all the time. And but I grew up being sheltered in a way in that small place until I was about 6. And then we moved to Bermuda, and I lived there in another cocoon, which was wonderful, until I was 11. And then when we moved from 11 to Rhode Island, I was thrust into you know, the heart of, you know, the American, the real Black man in America lifestyle. You know, you get a taste of what it really is. And, you know, not something that you, when I say get a taste, I mean, you know, it's not like, it was almost a surprise because, you know, it's different than being in the island where you have a lot of, you know, majority of, in other words, Black people, if you're around a lot of Black people all the time, just everybody's Black, you become.
Oh, you muted
Yourself.
Thanks. Thank you. So the thing I was going to say is that you take it for granted. You take for granted what you have, your culture. You take for granted all the subtle parts of your culture, you know, especially if you are not in a position where you're confronted with something different all the time. But, you know, what I was going to say is that Black people, we're all, unfortunately, because of the society we live in, we've been stratified. We've been stratified by education, stratified by economically, stratified by, you know, there are people right now who are hungry, don't know where they're going to get a meal from. The stimulus check means nothing. And other people who it's nothing, you know, it doesn't enter their frame of mind. And unfortunately, you know, for us, just having this, you know, like I'm a Baha'i, right? So one of the statements that Abdul Baha has made, Abdul Baha is the son of the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, for those of you who don't know, came to this country in 1912. He went to Howard University and went all the way across the country except to the South. He didn't go to the South because he insisted wherever the Baha'is were that they had to be integrated in 1912. I hope I said 1912. Anyway, 1912. So, you know, here he was. One of the statements that he said was that the situation in America would cause the streets of American cities to run with blood if we didn't arrest this situation. And his grandson wrote a book years later where he quoted him. And this is one of the things that we see. Do you remember, for some of you, the kids may not remember, but I remember watching Rodney King. Rodney King someone had taken a video camera in those and was watching him get beat in Simi Valley outside by a bunch of policemen. Then when the video was turned in, the police were arrested, but they were acquitted. That's why this guy, just because these guys have been arrested, doesn't mean that they're going to be convicted or go to do any jail time. What about this Trayvon Martin kid? What's this guy's name?
It's George Zimmerman.
Zimmerman. You know, here's the problem. Even if you have a conviction, in this society, you don't feel like you're getting justice because a lot of times nothing seems to change. In Seattle, Washington, for the first time in my life, I remember a few years ago, and I'm not advocating anything like this, but there was a guy who, within the last 10 years, he walked into a coffee shop and shot 4 policemen dead. Well, and one of them got him while he was there. Just walked in and shot them. Since then, I've heard of other guys walking up to police and just shooting them while they're in their car, you know, attacking the police. Now, I'm not advocating for that, but I see the frustration when people feel like no matter what we do, if there's not going to be justice, you know, and my life is not going to be worth anything anyway, well, here, I'll go and do this. And one guy shot himself after he shot the police. Now, I'm not advocating for that at all. The police, you know, but I know I've been on the receiving end at times in my lifetime for doing nothing, being on the receiving end, you know, of having someone come and attack me. You know, not attack me, but, you know, accost me, put a gun to my head, this type of thing.
Muted yourself again.
Normal. You said that like, oh, you know, like put a gun to my head. Like just even saying it like that is
No. It's the fact of the matter is, I know that majority. Pardon me?
Put a gun to my head. That's attack. You can't. You said
no.
Don't
get me wrong.
But that's what I'm saying though. Like even the fact that you can say it like that.
Well,
like,
no, that was no. I misspoke. I didn't mean it was nothing. Don't think I'm talking to every one of my kids. I don't, you know, talk about fear and dread, trepidation about what's going to happen to your child. I have four black men, young men, and I've tried over the years to make them aware without at the same time stifling them.
Yeah, that's the trick.
Let me tell you something. One of the things that's happened in the Baha'i community is I was probably about maybe 22, 23 years old. And for the first time and I have had friends of all diverse group of people in my whole life. But until I was about 22 or 23 years, I was about 22. The first time I ever had a white person actually advocate for me without me being asked, without me doing anything, it shocked me. I was in a state of shock. Now, I had a lot of white friends. People have done wonderful things for me all my life. But I've never had anybody where they stopped the person from saying what they were saying, whatever it was, you know, I was going over my head. And this person just advocated for me. Now, I've had a number of people, but I don't, you know, it's rare. I bet you there's a lot of people walking around who've never had anybody, any white person, any person who's not.
Those are the bystanders that were spoken of before. They're bystanders. I'm just a good white person and I'm not, but I don't feel any need to engage because I'm just a nice white person.
Or even if they want to, they might be afraid to. Who knows what the reason? But the fact of the matter is, it's like me. If I don't step up to the plate and somebody needs help in some way, I'm the same. I can't. I have a conscience. I can't just let things go. You know, I can't just let somebody just suffer and I see that, just pretend. You know, especially if we are basing it on some philosophy or some teaching that says, don't be active, don't be involved. That to me is hypocritical. So we have to live our lives.
Henry, I just want to give Rocky and Akil a chance. So Rocky, I know you next, and Akil will get back to you.
I'll try to be as succinct as I can. I'm actually, I was really enjoying listening to everybody speak because I feel affirmed. Um, I have a lot to say. I'm going to try to be as succinct as possible. I want to talk about the emotional impact. Joy, you and I have been talking about this, but I didn't tell you, I've had to stuff this. I've had to stuff it, right? I really have to stuff it because there's this phenomenon that we face, especially now with this pandemic and everything, with, trauma on top of trauma on top of impact on top of just left and right, right? I was telling you about 2.5 weeks ago, a young brother that I was working with got really close with. We were working together for a year and a half. I had spoken to him on Friday, and then I got a call from his attorney on Monday saying that he died from an accidental overdose. He was actually in a program working on, substance abuse stuff, and got his hands on something that was laced with fentanyl. I know his mother, people are trying to grieve during this time and can't, it was like, what are you supposed to do? How are people even grieving? That's the thing. Like, and it actually pisses me off that I have to stuff it, right? Like, it makes me angry that I have to stuff it. I want to be able to engage with this and feel it, but I'm pissed that I have to stuff it because I've got my own issue, my blood pressure, different health issues myself. And I'm in this work, I'm the program manager for a transitional age youth program, working with young people coming out of the jails in San Francisco and Alameda County, right? And we're already engaged in trying to save young people's lives and help them, break the change, make a change. And it's funny because before the shutdown happened, I had a chance to speak with the new sheriff of San Francisco, and he was coming in and introducing himself to a small group of folks that we do this work, and it came to me, and I told him, I said, it's good to meet you, but what are we going to do? We're steadily working with young people and trying to get them to be accountable and talking about all this restorative justice work and accountability and the interconnectivity of all of us and all that. But when we're dealing with, specifically in this case in San Francisco, that's so progressive and all that, it's like, you've got staff that are disrespectful to these young people all the time. How are we telling young people to be accountable when they're dealing with such disrespect from so-called authorities? It's such a mixed bag. And I mean, in terms of what happened with these deaths, it's like I had to shift my focus to just working with the young cats that we have, like, working and using this as a teachable moment. And it's so tricky though, when it's like, be responsible, do the right thing, change the way that you get down out here. Yeah, watch your back for the police. It's so funny. I've had instances where even now, we, like I say, a lot of the work we do, we're working with police officers, we're working with probation, right? And even me, like I've seen police instinctively reach for their guns because they get startled by me. I literally got off the bus one time and there was a police officer following the bus. I don't know what they were doing. There's some weird thing that they do out here in Oakland. But they were following the bus and I got off the bus and I was getting off to like cross the street. And the officer was a young white officer in the car. And I'm from Boston, by the way, hence the Celtics hat. So if I drop my R's, that's why. But the police officer, he looked up because he didn't notice, he was looking down doing something in his vehicle, and he looked up and he saw me and he instantly reached for his gun. I asked a San Francisco police officer, I said, I told her, actually sheriff's department, she's a sergeant for the sheriff's department. I told her about my experiences, and I already knew I was asking her a loaded question, but I just wanted to see what she was going to say. I said, what is it about seeing people I try to keep it real neutral. What is it about seeing people that you all, you're so quick to reach for your weapon? What is it? Is it training or is it bias, right? And she was so quick to say, well, it's training. It's absolutely training, right? And I'm like, I'm thinking, yeah, exactly. Right? But she goes, we're in this hallway, as we were standing in the hallway, and she says, if you were to come around the corner right now, and I didn't see you, I am trained to reach for my gun. So if this is the mentality of folks that are being tasked with, policing communities, and then you give that same power to some vigilantes, it's what are we left to do but as Brother Henry said, what if we start flipping it and going the other way, then will people start paying attention? Then will white folks start really, thinking twice about some of this vigilante bullshit? Excuse my French, but I'm done.
So I just wanted to say, and just, I'm not trying to push a book, but this is called Breaking Rank. This is a book written by a 34-year white police veteran who said that they learned in the academy that Black men are the enemy. And you all may have remembered a couple of years ago, they got permission, certain police departments across the country, to use the faces of Black men for their target practice. Yeah. And they said it's okay. And one police station, the face was the face of one of the fellow police officers. It was his brother's face.
See.
Right. And so you look at this because we have absolutely normalized the dehumanization of Black men, youth, and children. Our children don't even get to be children. They looked at Tamir and said they thought they saw a 20-year-old. He was 12. So, again, with that question you said, Raki, about, what is it in my training? It's in your DNA. Okay. So, I listen, I feel some kind of way. I know it ain't about me.
Moving to Akil.
Moving to Akil. I feel some kind of way. Sorry.
Yeah, that is you. Just like your name first.
Okay, my name's Akil. Yeah, I guess I'm a high school senior now. And I don't know, I feel like for me, like where we live in Maui, I think the distance is, it's a lot different. Just how people interact here, and it's not the same as how it happens in the mainland. But
I'm glad you said that, because I wondered about how it was out there.
Yeah. I feel like for me, I don't like feel it anymore. Like it happens way too often. Like it just kind of goes like not over my head, but I'm supposed to feel some type of way about it, but it just doesn't happen anymore because it just happens way too often. It's like, what is going to happen about it? So if it just happens over and over again, I don't know. It just like.
So are you
I think
that's saying, Akil, that again, because this is a concern. If it gets normalized to the point where you just get numb, is that what you're describing? Like,
yeah, essentially, like the first time you see, like the first time I saw something, I'm like, okay, what's gonna happen? Like, this is awful. But then it just happens over, over, over. It's like, okay, what do I do? Because like I'm 17, but I'm tall. I look like I'm like, some people think I'm like 23. What do I do when I'm walking down the street? Yeah,
I know it. I know you are. No, I mean, you're my son. So,
You're right, though. You're right.
You're right.
Yeah, I know he's not. I'm just joking with him. But you know, we also like Akil. We spent his formative years in the Berkeley Oakland community. So you know, growing up there, I mean, my wife and I made conscious choices about where and how we were going to educate and raise our children. My wife is not from the United States, and she will not stand for any of this nonsense. She's worse than me. I mean, I don't like to mess with her. She's all 4 foot something of her. She will, I can't. She couldn't stomach it. It would. I mean, I'm accountable to my Creator for the lives of my children, and if I didn't do everything I could to give them the opportunity to recognize God and His manifestations, then what have I done? I mean, I haven't been the parent I'm supposed to be, and doubly so. I mean, I believe my wife would probably it would not something we could live with. So I mean, this is on lots of levels, self-preservation, you know, and at other levels, having a knowledge that we can do different things and also still hold people accountable. We need to be able to figure out how our lives need to look as people who live in a broader context than the United States. The United States has offered us cancer over and over and over and over again, and we keep drinking it, or we keep acknowledging that, yes, it is poisonous, and yes, it is, but we must begin to do different things and live differently. I'm not saying that this is within everybody's power to do, and everybody should just jump on a plane and relocate, but we can live other places. Although people have, like I said, we can still be a community of African Americans, and like I said, that diaspora of African Americans need not stop at the borders of the United States. Because the world is in so much need of genuine, African Americans have know-how and skills and abilities that they don't quantify in general. Nobody wants to quantify, but then again, when you go different places, you find out that you can be so much more useful, and you can be so much more, I mean, no matter where you are, you bring a certain level of humanity to what you do. No requirements, no foreign direct investment and tied up loans and stuff like that. Just who you are. Let me help you out. Let me see, you know, it takes, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I'm not saying those hierarchies don't exist other places, but at the end of the day, African Americans are so valuable. We're so valuable in the world that we undervalue ourselves when we're in the United States, and we accept that. It's just not true.
You know, well, I want to say, well, first thing I want to let everybody know that you have 10 minutes left. And as much as not that we can't go over, we're not required to stop at an hour, but I wanted just to say that this is hopefully the tip of the iceberg. I think that we don't have a lot of opportunities to hear from people on a regular basis. I think people are feeling disempowered. And even for me, I have a son who's about to be 17, and the idea of one, providing him with and my name is Bahia, you know, I do this with Mom every Wednesday, but the idea of how to empower him not to feel completely powerless in the moment, because I do feel that as much as this depletes us, it also depletes our ability to be creative and resourceful and to strategize. So if we don't also at the same time recognizing the impact this is having on us, causing, acknowledge that, not to stuff it. I know you have to stuff it in some ways, Raki, but to figure out a way to not stuff it, but to channel it in a direction that is actually going to promote you to feel like you have some power and control over your life. Because once you start feeling completely powerless and completely hopeless and completely without regard, that's when you get to the point where you're shooting up officers in the you get to, you know, I'm gonna take one with me. You know what I'm saying? Mentality. So part of it is we need these spaces for us to be able to come together to hear the voice. I think people always love to speak for Black men. What's happening with Black men? What did Black men don't get to speak. So I'm so happy that you all have been on here to do that. And I'm hoping that we can create, I mean, even if it is a monthly series, I think that we should have an opportunity for you to weigh in some of the strategies you're using, some of the things, ways that you're taking back your control, even if that is building up a young brother next to you or the ones that you're working with or your sons, would be really helpful for people who are watching to be able to hold on to.
And I would like to hear, since we don't have we don't ever go on the time that's supposed to be happening. So what I would like to have happen though, I'd like to hear what you would offer and what you would recommend, you know, for folks like, you know, I know Raki and Nadim, you're talking to me. We had a conversation about the fact that some of these young guys are like, you know, they're trying to eat. You know what I'm saying? They're on a whole nother level, and we need to reach everybody. You know, on this call, you know, we have people all over the country, but I don't think represented here is, that brother on the street that, good heart, good brain. We're now 3 months into no check, right? Because don't forget, we're sheltering in place if you got a shelter at all. So I want to send a message, because this will get sent out to other people. So I want you all to give some just some ideas about how to cope, whether that's cope emotionally to take care of yourself, how to take care of yourself in the community, and learning how to process this. I figured that after a little while, it took me about 48 hours to be able to calm down from being triggered, to be able to say, I couldn't have come on here the day of. I don't think any of us could have.
Right.
None of us would have been any good on that day, right? And we know, for example, the armed militia showed up. You had some Black folks in armed militia that showed up. Police didn't come down that street. There was nobody confronting them. They had a permit to carry, open carry, bearing arms, but it always changes when it's us. So again, there are all kinds of reactions, but I want to hear just something that you would recommend for someone out there that's struggling, wherever they are.
I think for me, allowing yourself to be emotional, like I heard Akil and some of the other folks talking about the numbness of just seeing these images too much. And I think being okay with crying. I know as Black men, we're not really given a lot of opportunity to be emotional and vulnerable, but you can be upset, you can be angry. I think talking it out, I talk about this stuff with my kids, even though some of it seems like, is this too morbid to talk about with my kids? But I think it gives you a sense of like, well, now they know and they have some of this information. I think with the young men I work with, I think helping to literally train them through these situations. I had folks who literally helped me to figure out how to get through situations, whether it's, can I speak to a manager, or keeping your voice level down to a certain point. Now, obviously, I think there's situations where these folks just want to kill us. And I think, no matter what you do, that might not necessarily get you out of it. But I think teaching these skills, because I think at the same time, the culture is pushing the kids in the direction of where when the police come up on you, you're doing everything that gets you killed instead of the things that help you survive. So I think, as far as things we can control, having these conversations with our young men, I think, even just maybe we ain't going out solo like that anymore. Maybe it's we're going in groups. I know for a while, for me, when I was young, when I started having these incidents with police, prepay legal, or having some means of like, I'm gonna call somebody, so I'm not just here with this police officer by myself, so that I've got some backup. But at the end of the day, that and prayer and luck.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, man. I was just sitting here thinking the same thing. We have this phrase that we say in the work that we do, restorative justice, where they say, trust the process. And my faith led me to say, you know what, there's going to be a point when I'm going to be able to process this. I got good people in my life. So thank you all seriously for the opportunity to get this out and get it off. And that's what I try to instill in my staff that work with, the young folks that are coming out of these jails. It's like, yo, you got good people. You got good people. Rely on us. You know what I'm saying? We got each other. So rely on the people that you got, the good people that you got. Trust the process.
Thank you, Raki.
Thank you for having me here. I need it.
I want to make a comment. I think for young Black men, old Black men, one of the things that I noticed is that, you have to, I don't have the sweetest temper all the time, and I don't have a poker face. If someone messes with me, it shows on my face. Everybody knows that I can't lie. It's just there. So, when I get stopped and I'm going about my business, I'm doing my thing, and the police stop me, I'm not really happy about it, but I'm polite. I know that I don't have, if it comes down to me giving him a piece of my lip at this point, I don't have anything to gain, especially if I'm alone. I don't have anything to gain. So I become more like, okay. And I just listen, try and do what I'm doing. Not that these other people aren't doing that either. And I know that in my life, that's just being polite, dealing with it later when I have a chance to regroup and all this, not in the heat of the moment. That's better than, like, and I wouldn't tell anybody, like the poor brother that got shot saying, hey, I got a gun in my car, hey, I wouldn't say that to anybody. You're going to find that's just, certain things you can't do in this society are going to, you just set yourself up. And not that you shouldn't be able to, you shouldn't be, you legally should have that right, but let's be wise, especially if you're by yourself. Let's be wise. And I will say one other thing. My dad grew up in the Jim Crow South. My dad was a minister, so he wore a suit all the time. When I was a kid, I couldn't understand it. Then I would see the Muslims on the corner selling newspaper. They all had suits on. They weren't wearing dashikis. They were walking around in suits and ties on a hot summer day selling newspapers. But they probably weren't getting shot. You know what I mean? It's just being polite, being firm in who you are, but at the same time having a certain presence of, I don't know. I guess what I say is people have this thing in their mind about who we are. You're not going to defeat that thing that they have in their mind. You cannot get rid of that. That's going to have to be something that they change. You can't make anybody. So you have to protect yourself. That's all I'm saying. You want to make a comment? No. Yeah. No.
Thank you, Henry.
I'd also say if they kill one of us, we should stop buying their shit. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's Walmart this week, I think I heard my mom say it back in the day, but for real, we consume more than anybody else. That's what we do very well, and they count on for us. So I feel like anytime, because we know this stuff happens, and we bank on the fact that we ain't gonna see justice. But I feel like at the very least, stop buying they shit. Like, let's just, you know what I'm saying? And I know that's very difficult. I know that, not everybody economically has the ability to just say no Walmart this week or no whatever. But I feel like if there could be maybe a big enough name or a large enough group of important folks in the Black community who are saying, hey, we're not going to rock with Target this week because they shot that brother down the street, maybe somebody might give a
Coke
shit.
in the 80s, in the 90s.
Who you took the
Coke's bottom line was severely
absolutely. I was just about to bring that up. Yeah, it's been done. That's right.
I think there's a certain level of solidarity that's missing within the community as we begin to vie for status within this
cooperative economics, collective work and responsibility, all these things that we know are to be necessary. And I always look at the Montgomery bus boycott because it's treated with short, it's just like giving a very, very small part of our pedagogy. They talk about it as if the bus boycott lasted one day. It was almost a full year.
Right.
And it was a massive feat of social cooperation among African Americans. And it's now time for African Americans to have a massive feat of social and economic cooperation on a global scale. And we have the resources, the intelligence, the personal, we have everybody we need, but there needs to be a coming together, and it needs to be done with those who, look, I'm sitting here and I would say, my wife may not love me for this, but I'm the type of person where I throw everything that I have into it if it's supposed to be the right thing. I'll do that. It doesn't matter to me. Doesn't matter how much money I don't have. It's going to be where it needs to be because it's better than sitting in my pocket doing nothing. So when it comes down to like us working together and doing things together, I'm in. So like that needs to be like, I'm not trying to say that this would be my 2 cents in terms of like what is the next level. It requires a level of action and social cooperation. I mean, people have done this historically, and it can be done now. The other part of this I would say is like just in terms of the way we relate to one another also needs to change in speech. I think that Nadeem hit something that we need to love one another first and have that be the impetus for all our interactions. I know that everybody's not on the same grind. I know that. I know everybody is doing certain things differently and there's a different state of mind. But the reality is, I mean, I see people in conflict. I've been in conflicts where I said, you could try to take my life and might be successful at it, but my life was yours anyway. So why would you do that? My life is already yours. I mean, I will do whatever. I mean, I'm gonna be here for you within the context of what is right and just. So in that sense, we need to be more sincere. We need to tell one of our brothers and sisters we love them. I mean, just the way that somebody had mentioned the Black Muslims in the South and in New York, they had an entire, I mean, say what you want, but they had an entirely different lexicon that they used for one another. They had an entirely different way of communicating with one another. And that was something that removed them from the harshness of what we had to deal with. I mean, and that's just something that's going to affect your psychology on a daily basis, that we're surrounded by love. Our music is love. Our music are prayer and love. And we surround ourselves with those things. And we wonder why we run down the streets with a ghetto blaster, because we surround ourselves with it to stay okay. You know,
what that does is it does two things. It not only dilutes the harshness that we live under, but it disassociates us from a system that we could otherwise fall into. And that's one thing that I think is really important to understand about where we are now, is that this system is not designed for me. It's not designed for Asian Americans. It's not designed for Latino Americans. It's not designed for Native Americans. It's designed for the health, well-being, and prosperity and ownership of white men. That is the structure of how this system is supposed to function, and it will protect at all costs, with little investment of any additional energy to the system, at all costs, protect their interest. And I'll have to say that right now, it is operating with startling efficiency. No one is having to put anything, there's already enough momentum behind the system that exists where white men don't even have to do anything and they'll get out of jail. They won't have to do anything and they can kill someone and get away with it. It's not, this thing is on rails now. And so I think all those efforts that you're talking about that have happened historically are attempts to strategically disassociate ourselves from that system. The Nation of Islam had a different system, a different lexicon, as you're saying. At this point, we're still struggling to defeat the system from the inside, and it can't be. We can't defeat, we have to create something new and altogether different. Otherwise, we're just a part of the same system. I watched the other day with my daughter, and I hate to bring this up, but I watched The Matrix for the first time because she'd never seen it before and all that kind of thing. And The Matrix, I hate to bring it up because people have a lot of feelings about it. But one of the things I like about it is that it described a system where we believe that we're operating in a way, when in reality, we're operating as a means and a function of the system. Even our efforts to resist it are all predictable and accounted for, and there's an effort to already in place to defeat it. And I know that my daughter didn't pick up all this stuff because she's very young, but that's effectively what we're up against. And I see a lot of our efforts these days are designed to facilitate an ongoing sort of cycle of problems, issues that we won't resolve unless we complete something, we make something completely new.
But we do have control over, one of the things you talked about is how we treat one another. I watched the Jill Scott and Erykah Badu verses the other day. It was a love fest. But what was so wonderful about it was it's supposed to be verses, like, you know, they had the failed babyface Teddy Riley version. That one was a little dicey. But when they've been doing these things, I've been watching how creative we are, and, you know, D Nice doing his, you know, club quarantine, and ways that we are taking kind of who we are naturally and making it a love fest for our community. We've been doing that virtually now because we have to, but it's demonstrating, putting on display the ability for us to love one another. And so I do think that the more that we are able to take and share ways of showing love and compassion, you know, I've been working with families, I work with children and families, and being able to help them navigate being in the close quarters for long periods of time without, you know, access to, you know, everybody doesn't have the kind of internet service to enable them to join classes and do all these different things, but giving them some practices to be able to create love and light in their house. Because there are some things that you can't control, but you can create an environment of compassion. And that gives you a feeling of control and empowerment. I had my kids do a guided meditation the other day with candles, and you should have seen the zone that they got into just in settling their nerves. So I feel like sometimes you have more power than you think that you have in terms of regulating your internal status. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like we have to be able to talk more about love. When Erykah Badu and Jill Scott were doing their thing and Erykah Badu's song got cut off, Jill Scott played her song for her. And it was so much love and you know, just really uplifting one another, you know, talking to our friends about, you know, that person's shine and pushing their shine doesn't deplete your shine. You know, it doesn't give your light to promote other people. And doing that with males in particular, I think is really important, because you don't get that same sense of you're competing with me. You know, I'm better than you. You're better. You can dismantle that, like Malik says, saying you are me. Why would you want to kill me? You're killing you. You know, you are me. I am you. that vibe, and that is the thing that I think the nation was very effective in doing, is everybody was a brother, everybody was a sister, everybody was, and there was never this sense of, I'm against you. And I think we can get back to that. We can build that in terms of insulating ourselves so that we can move ourselves towards collective action. But we can't.
I mean, love isn't part of the system. Love was never part of the system. Love isn't in the Constitution. Right. So, I mean, that is an act of resistance.
Right.
No, I'm not. I mean, I haven't read the whole.
Oh, it's true. You ain't lying.
So, I want to make a statement here. Might be a little contrary to everybody, but I bought a shotgun. Now, hold on. I'm not advocating.
Go on.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating any violence. But what I'm saying here is for you parents out there, okay? Have you ever considered having your children shoot a gun?
Yeah.
I know where the guns are.
Okay. What I'm saying is, I want to have a feeling that I'm not a total victim when I'm in the world. Okay. And now, hey, I love you. I love everybody on this window here. I love everybody. I love. But I want to make sure that if I have opportunity not to be a victim, I'm gonna take that opportunity, because let me see, Constitution ain't for us. I understand that. But we live where the Second Amendment drives everybody else. And I don't know if all y'all saw those brothers marching in front of McMichael's house with their arms, and nobody messed with them. And see, and I feel that if people didn't think that they could just mess with us all the time and get away with it, I could shoot you down and get away with it. I might shoot you back. Well, I'm just throwing that out there.
All righty then.
Okay, but I don't want to feel like I'm a victim whenever I step out in the street or even at home.
Well, I mean, this might be a topic for a different Wednesday, but I think violence is not an irrational response to violence. And violence, I think, has a very interesting, the word violence has an interesting place in our lexicon as it is. But violence is simply two forces acting against one another. We assign a certain value to what violence really can mean and how we express it. But I think violence, in a certain sense, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Frantz Fanon, but I think that violence is a force, and it needs to be imbued with intent. And I think that everyone says nonviolence, we shouldn't be violent. And whenever any sort of powerful group begins to say, let's not be violent, that's an abuse of the understanding and a manipulation of the function of what violence is supposed to be.
Right. So, I'm just going to make sure that Black people don't just fear arming ourselves. It is part of the game that they have played on us, that we should not even be concerned with that, because if you do, I'm gonna treat you as a criminal, and I'm gonna look bad on you, and you might use it against. But the fact of the matter is, to me, it shouldn't be totally absent from our lexicon that we can protect ourselves, and if necessary, stand up for ourselves. So
let me just say this. In Africa, you got plenty of guys with guns, and people don't feel safe. They're not safe from one another. Take places where there are no Black people. Are no white people. There are plenty of guns. And as long as a person, I've been fortunate to not be a victim. But, I think that for somebody like me, it might not be a good thing to have a gun. I don't know how many of you guys have been in fights in your life. I have, I don't know that it would have been good for me to have a gun.
Hey, can we hear from Olinga?
To kind of piggyback off of the point Bahia made earlier, actually, I always think of the metaphor about the bundle of sticks, where if you have one, it breaks very easily on its own. But if you have a collective, then it's, there's a source of strength there. And I think about people's ability to unite and to mobilize together and totally denounce something and say, this is wrong and we're not going to stand for this going forward. The only reason those people are, currently in jail are because people were vocal about their outrage, vocal about not wanting to accept this, not wanting to accept this as the norm. So I think it's always important to be conscious about, like, both on the community level, on the national level, you know, you have people making laws, legislating. I'm young, so, you know, I just voted for the first time a few months ago. Exercise your, you know, your First Amendment rights. You know, your ability to vote, your ability to affect these things through change in both legislature and change of, you know, people interacting with each other on the ground level.
Can I say something, Bahia?
Yeah.
Olinga just made me think about is the reason that we know about the existence of that video and the reason that it spread so quickly is because of social media. There is something very powerful about us being able to tell the stories of what is happening in our own communities. If you all remember, a couple weeks ago, there was the brothers who had the cell phones inside the prisons, and they were documenting and getting out to the traditional news media what was actually happening inside prisons to Black men and how they were being affected, how they were not being given the gear and protective gear and whatnot to protect themselves. And that is a part of telling our own stories. And I say, you know, Black folks, we run Twitter, we run Instagram, we pretty much running Facebook right now, okay? Like, we are incredibly, in terms of showing love, showing that support, being able to talk about things. If you look at the trending topics on any given day, it's the things that Black folks are talking about. So I tell all young people, if you have a phone, you have the ability to broadcast exactly what is happening in your community at any given time. You have the ability to tell that story, to take that power back into your own hands. And, you know, it's interesting. I think back to the 2008 election and how the traditional media was attempting to make a narrative about President Obama's campaign. And it all fell apart because of a website called Jack and Jill Politics. And on that website, you had, you know, brothers and sisters who were attending all of his events and would actually say, no, here's what actually happened. Here's how many people actually showed up. Here were the questions that were being asked by the audience. And it was very, very different from what you saw being reported in the traditional press. That is the role that papers like the Chicago Defender, the Los Angeles Sentinel, the North Star have historically played in our communities. We don't have those papers anymore. Ebony magazine is a shell of itself. Essence is prominent on the web. Jet, where we used to get all of our, you know, weekly news, does not exist in the way that it did. But all of us have the ability to tell those stories, not just when someone is being brutally killed, but what is happening on a day-to-day basis. Every single last one of these brothers and sisters here on the phone here, you know, these young people, you don't have to just use your phone for, you know, chats and whatnot. I mean, have fun with it, but I think that is a powerful tool to be able to get your story out.
These Wellness Wednesdays get on average about 14,000 views. We've already had it shared about 125 times since we've been on. So you need to think about the fact that you use the platform that you have, right, to promote, to at least spark the curiosity in people to say, maybe I can think differently or do things differently because I was able to participate and witness. We have over 400 comments that have come through right now that you can't see here, but you can go back on the website and look at all the comments that people are chiming in and saying thank you and shouting out to the kids, Badi and Akil, like, sorry for that happened to you and sorry you feel this way. So I think that part of what we're doing in using this platform to connect to our community is to give them hope, to give them some strategy, to let them know that they are valued and cared for by us, at least in a way that they can just participate and engage. And so I thank everybody who was willing to come on here. I hope that we can call out to you again, that you'll be willing to join us. We started this just to try to promote some healing out here. And folks have really been looking forward to it. They tune in every week thus far, and they share it with other people. And so please, if you have an idea, if you want to even, you know, you want to share something, we can feature you on this platform to be able to talk about some innovative ideas or some ways to spread some love and some joy and some social justice But I just want to tell everybody, thank you. I don't know if anyone has any final words. We're about to log off.
I want to kind of close it out because I know we've gone way over. Again, thank everybody. But one of the things I wanted to put out there, we're not able to talk about Brianna. We have not forgotten about her or her family. And I want us to take a moment of silence. If someone would like to say a prayer, that we can do that too. But I want to honor that for both families, for all the people, our whole community that's been wounded. And I want to take that moment of silence. If someone, again, wants to say a prayer, that's fine. If not, that's okay too.
O my God, O thou forgiver of sins, bestower of gifts, dispeller of afflictions. Verily I beseech thee to forgive the sins of such as have abandoned the physical garment and have ascended to the spiritual world. O my Lord, purify them from trespasses. Dispel their sorrows and change their darkness into light. Cause them to enter the garden of happiness. Cleanse them with the most pure water, and grant them to behold thy splendors on the loftiest mount.
Thank you, everyone.
Sure.
Everybody else out there, be safe and be smart and be the healing, right? Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Well, love y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you guys.
Thank you.
Love you all.
Love you.